This is the only thing that gives me pause. This is the only thing that gives me skirt. You know why? Because I'm looking at an administration that's basically burning down the whole house and taking the curtains with them 2 months before Trump gets into office. There's no way that this should be happening. When I asked this question on the show last night, I was confused. I was honest to God confused. And the reason that I was confused is because nobody, and I mean nobody that was liberal on that panel would hold Biden accountable and the Kamala Harris regime accountable for the fact that they continue to hit the button and pushing us closer to nuclear war. But let's spend a little bit of time talking about it, because the United States of America has authorized Ukraine to push us further into World War III, while the first U.S. missile has been deployed deep into Russia.
Breaking overnight, some alarming news from overseas. Russian President Vladimir Putin has formally lowered the threshold for his country's use of nuclear weapons. It comes just days after the U.S. allowed Ukraine to strike inside Russia using American longer-range missiles. Chief International Correspondent Keir Simmons joins us with the latest on this. Keir, good morning. Tell us what this means.
Well, Savannah, this will raise alarm bells, particularly because of the timing. Important to note that Russia has made many nuclear threats before during the war on Ukraine, but it's changed now its nuclear doctrine to enable Russia to launch a nuclear strike on a non-nuclear country that is supported by a nuclear country. That's clearly a message to Ukraine and the United States. And fast-moving events, Savannah, we're hearing now from Russia that it says that U.S. long-range ATACMS missiles have been used in the Bryansk area of Russia. Russia says it shot down 5 of them, but that one has caused a fire at a military facility. So many different events happening. One other thing to tell you, though, Savannah, the Kremlin spokesman saying in a briefing just in the last hour or so that Russia still considers nuclear weapons a weapon of last resort. Savannah.
When somebody like Vladimir Putin says that we've lowered the threshold for being able to leverage and use nuclear weapons, that's not something that we could just ignore.
Turning overseas today, the Kremlin warned President Biden is adding fuel to the fire by allowing Ukraine to use long-range U.S. missiles that can strike targets inside Russia. The military calls the missiles ATACMS. One Russian lawmaker today said firing them over the border could lead to World War III. CBS's Holly Williams is in Ukraine tonight.
Well, too late for that.
Ukraine's been using American-supplied ATACMS against Russian forces since last year. Some of the missiles have a range of close to 200 miles. But before now, the US had refused the Ukrainians permission to hit targets inside Russia, concerned about an escalation in the conflict. Colonel Maxim Balagura of Ukraine's state border guard hinted last month about what the Ukrainians could attack with the powerful US weapons.
If the US would allow you to use ATACMS to hit Russia, what difference would that make?
If the Russians don't have any ammunition or any planes, then manpower won't matter, he told us. In recent months, Russian forces have been gaining ground and targeting Ukraine cities with deadly glide bombs, Soviet-era ammunition retrofitted with wings and GPS. Last month, we witnessed the aftermath of a small glide bomb in this residential neighbourhood.
You can see the devastation that it's wreaked. It's literally ripped the front off the building.
And now Russia's military's been bolstered by more than 10,000 North Korean soldiers. They may join an offensive to retake territory in Kursk in southern Russia, where Ukraine launched an audacious incursion in August. In September, Vladimir Putin said that if the US allowed Ukraine to use ATACMS inside his country, it would mean that America and Russia are at war.
And he wasn't lying. He said, listen, and I reviewed it here on the Millionaire Morning Show, and he said, if the United States of America allows for Ukraine to use these weapons deep inside Russian territory, then I'm going to consider ourselves at war with the United States of America. Officially, unofficially, however you want to play it, that's how we're going to do it. Let's go over to talk about Ukraine actually firing the first U.S.-made long-range missile into Russia. Check it out.
Let's bring in CNN's Nickpton. Walsh, tell us more about what we know regarding Ukraine using the U.S.-made ATACMS missiles and what the potential targets were.
Yeah, we know only what the Russian Ministry of Defense is telling us, which is about 3:25 a.m. local time. 6 missiles, they say, were fired at a military facility in Bryansk. That's another region on the border area, not far away from Kursk, which currently has a significant Ukrainian military presence inside of it. Now, the Russians claim that they took out 5 of those 6. We've heard that in the past, that they have claimed to significantly prevented Ukrainian air assaults. But the significance here, of course, is that nobody appears to be wasting any time in getting this permission from the Biden administration into the battlefield, possibly because it is possible that when President Donald Trump takes office in January the 20th, he may reverse the frankly unexpected but long in the mind of Ukraine overdue decision by President Joe Biden at the weekend. It's extraordinary because of the pace here. I'm not sure it's necessarily unexpected to some degree, because we have known that Ukraine have been in possession of ATACMS missiles like this to hit targets inside of occupied areas of Ukraine. And so in theory, I suppose the target list would have already been in their possession, and this simply being a matter of Kiev deciding that they wanted to use this new US permission. But it comes on the 1,000th day of a war so full of unexpected moments here. And I think we are now going to have to see whether Ukraine steps forward and officially acknowledges that this indeed was an ATACMS missile launching this particular strike. Just in the last 48 hours, President Volodymyr Zelensky has sort of hedged that, generally saying, look, we're not going to necessarily announce this. Missiles will speak for themselves. Well, certainly that news has indeed emerged. What could Russia's response be? They have been unclear at this particular point, previously warning that if these missiles were fired by Ukraine, supplied as they are by the United States, that would essentially be NATO, the US and Europe joining the war, becoming a party to the conflict. Putin has not reiterated that himself since this, but indeed his foreign ministry made similar noises. So it's a key moment here, certainly, and it's one important to phrase it here, Amara. We're seeing the Trump presidency loom, the likelihood of negotiations there, European allies maneuvering, showing the fact they're not on the same page, frankly, as Olaf Scholz, the lame duck chancellor of Germany, made a call to the Kremlin head on Friday. That notion of diplomacy is clear and coming down the track. And so I think we're seeing the Biden administration giving this permission to use the ATACMS to potentially complicate the war that President-elect Trump inherits, and I think also give Ukraine a chance on the battlefield to get the upper hand. Remember, they're very worried, the Americans, about North Korean troops and a Russian offensive into that Kursk area where Ukrainian troops are currently occupying part of it.
Yeah,
This is coming up on the 1,000th day. The 1,000th day of the war. Meaning that we're going into year 3. All right, 365 days in a year. Your times 2. We're going into year 3. Like, this is about to be the 3rd year. We're not going to pass the 3rd year prior to Trump actually taking office. But we've been over 2.5 years into this war, about to be in a 3rd year with no end in sight, and it continues to escalate. What's the end? What's the end result? That's what I'm trying to understand. What's the end result of this whole thing? What is it that this whole administration is looking to accomplish with their legacy, with being involved in this, with not exercising some level of diplomacy? World peace is what we need because the whole world is in shambles. And now we've escalated to the point where Putin is saying that we're lowering the bar for the use of nuclear weapons, potentially now that the United States of America, according to what our rules of engagement is, has declared war on Russia. What's the end result? North Korea, China, Iran, got multiple different wars. What was the goal of this administration? Let's say hypothetically that we had voted Kamala Harris into office, which is a continuation of what we've been witnessing right now, because Kamala Harris in her interviews and during the election campaign said that she was in the room for all of the major decisions that Biden was having because she's an extension of the president. And so what I'm wondering is, and what I'm asking is, because she also said that there would be no difference in her presidency had she got elected versus Trump. What exactly is the end goal here? Are y'all thinking that Putin is going to say, you know what? We resign. We give up. They won the war. Is that what y'all think is going to happen? Everything is going to continue to escalate further and further and further and further and more and more and more until eventually we plunge into this deep war that ultimately is going to destroy all of us and make it more uncomfortable for us every single day. See, we sitting here in the comforts of our studio in our home and we watching this from work and we like, dang, because you don't actually feel the direct, immediate impact of it, it's not as important to you. But as this president continued to burn down everything, including the curtains on his way out the door, this is what you got to deal with. This is a continuation of what you would have been dealing with had Kamala Harris become president of the United States of America. But thank God, us Republicans and those that switched sides said that we don't want another 4 years of this.